Will this bourbon drinker like the Irish whiskey you recommended? Today we're doing a review of Redbreast 12. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, I have finally gotten around to a review of Redbreast 12 Irish whiskey. This is by far the most recommended bottle on the channel. Many different videos across the channel, I have seen this popping up from a good number of you saying basically, if you're looking to branch out apart from bourbon, get more into international stuff, you gotta try Redbreast 12 Irish whiskey, particularly for all those rooting for me to try more Irish whiskeys. You have said this is basically a classic quintessential Irish whiskey. All I've really had is Jameson, and you've told me that this will be a step up, and it will at least show me what sort of the standard is for really good Irish whiskey, since many of you have said this pretty much is the standard. This is the core of Irish whiskey and should teach me a little bit more about this category. First, just want to say thanks for the recommendation. I know it took a little while, but I am getting around to it now. And on that note, thanks for all the engagement with the channel. It's been so awesome to see it grow. As of this filming, we just crossed 900 subscribers. Never thought that would happen, and we've got the goal now to get to 1,000 by the end of the year, which seems doable. If we hit that goal, we're gonna do a really fun giveaway. So if you haven't already, please consider hitting that big red button and subscribing. While you're at it, hit that like button. All right, let's do a little overview of what we're actually sipping on today. So 12 years old, as it says on the front here. I know that's pretty standard in like Irish whiskey and Scotch overall. It says on the very front, considered the definitive expression of single pot still Irish whiskey. So we know single pot still and that definitive expression, probably why a lot of you have recommended it so much. And I know that it's matured in different kinds of oak casks, so ex-bourbon is one of them, and then ex-sherry butts as well. So should be a nice rounded, interesting flavors being brought because of that. The mash bill, it says, is both malted and unmalted barley. I'm not exactly sure how that will affect the whiskey. Maybe you guys can let me know what the difference is between like purely all malted or some unmalted. But then it's triple distilled in copper pot stills. So basically, the definitive expression of Irish whiskey. I have to try it and know what Irish whiskey can taste like and what sort of core and central to this great category of spirits here. And then let's actually get the bottle out just because we can look at it as we sip. I'll show that off as well. So sort of a squat bottle. Proof on this is 80 proof, I believe, and price-wise, I paid about 62 bucks for this, which it was a little bit of a discount, so right around that $65 mark, which for international whiskey is not too bad at all. And then last but not least, this comes from, I believe it's Middleton Distillery in County Cork, Ireland, so I think they produce a heck of a lot of whiskey there. So interested to dive in here. I know that was a lot of preamble, but the good news is it's allowed the whiskey to open up, and now we're ready to dive into the nose, palate, and finish. So without further ado, let's just jump in on the nose. Redbreast 12, everybody. Oh, that is honey and fruit for sure. Something like vanilla and caramel too. Lots of vanilla. I'm used to bourbon with those vanilla, caramel, darker tones. This is lighter and fruitier, but still has some of that. It's weird, but it smells oily or buttery to me. Like, it doesn't smell like butter, but I can tell I'm anticipating a thickness because of what it smells like. But a lot of red fruit, might be that sherry influence, but it's a little bit spicy. It's almost like a spicy strawberry, spicy cherry. So really nice nose. I mean, inviting me in with vanilla, cherry, spice, lots of honey, a hint of viscosity that it's given away already. I can't complain about that nose at all, guys. It's really, really good. So far, enjoying it a lot. All right, let's go in for the first sip on the palate. Cheers. Yep, okay. What an easy sipper, first of all. I mean, I usually drink things above 80 proof, but at 80 proof, so smooth in the way it goes down. I would 100% say there's still a lot of flavor there. Surprisingly, I think the palate, while some of what came on the nose transferred over, the palate really is much more buttery and bready than the nose gave away. Now I actually am tasting like butter cookie, buttered biscuit. I've heard a lot of people describe Irish whiskey in those realms, and I definitely get a lot of buttery notes here. Still good vanilla. Most surprising thing for me though is how nutty it is. It really went toward like a hazelnut or an almond, kind of the outer parts of an almond, that it just tasted so nutty, especially in the center of the palate. Back end is a touch drying and a little bit more woody and brings some of that spice to play, which is kind of cool. But I think what really took me aback was how buttery and nutty the middle portion of that sip was. Very solid, nothing to complain about. Enjoying it for sure. I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but I'm at least enjoying the process. So let's go back in for another sip now that the palate's been hit with some whiskey, and see if we can pick out some more flavors. Cheers. Okay. So on the front part to the mid part, a lot more of that fruit. So like a red fruit, like a strawberry or a cherry came through, with more of that honey and spice too. And the spice lingers a bit, which is cool. But then it does really get overtaken for me with this like vanilla, buttery, creamy, and the mouthfeel on this is actually pretty solid, especially for 80 proof. But this buttery, creamy center that gets matched, and sort of the next step is this nuttiness. That's the part that I'm both enjoying and think is an interesting flavor profile, but also a little bit wary of and maybe isn't my favorite overall. It's like, it's so buttery, I guess, just like pure butter flavor or buttercream to me, which I like overall. It's just kind of surprising me and I'm not that used to it, but pretty solid. Let's go back to the nose and revisit on the nose. Yeah, still that vanilla, spicy, fruity, maybe a touch more nut now that I have that on my palate. Kind of like a raisin note coming through now too. And honey, a spicy honey kind of experience. Very, very solid. All right, let's go back in for our third sip now, really evaluate that finish, see how long it lingers on the palate, and do a final overview. Cheers, everybody. All right, so very similar experience there. Front is very sweet, a little bit of spice. Middle portion is that buttery, biscuity, cookie-like center with some nut mixed into it as well. Back end, some of that nuttiness lingers, a little bit of that spice comes back up, but a heck of a lot of like vanilla sticks around for me, which is very, very pleasant. So overall, I think this is a really, really good whiskey. It is so easy to sip. I mean, it goes down almost dangerously smoothly. Very, very easy to sip, and I can take much bigger sips of this than most bourbons that I have on my shelves, which is great and very, very pleasant. I think what I'm struggling or reaching for a little bit is I just wish it had a little bit more punch at times, and I wish that middle portion, it kind of gets a little bit overwhelmed for me in the middle with that butter cookie kind of note, which I don't dislike. It's not that I dislike it, it's just that I don't think it's like particularly my favorite note, but I can appreciate how well balanced and how it's a good progression of flavors and how it is a really well put together whiskey. Okay, so it's time to wrap this up with a couple of final thoughts. Like I said, super well put together whiskey. I can tell it's just quality. If you put this up against Jameson, I mean, this is knocking it out of the park. I'll take this all day, every day over that, and I can see how good Irish whiskey can be. I'm starting to get a glimmer of that, or a sense of that, because this whiskey is really, really well put together. I think personal preference-wise, Irish whiskey might just not hit my palate as well as bourbon. It's also something I have to explore more, learn more about, and continue to develop a taste for. So this, as a first step into actually really good Irish whiskey, is a great first step, and I'm glad you guys recommended it. It is so smooth and so pleasant, and the nose is really, really awesome. The palate is very good, and the finish is very, very solid. I think some of that spice comes back up for me and balances some things out. It's a little bit drying, but overall a very good experience. So I gotta say, this Redbreast 12 is giving me a really good indication of how good Irish whiskey can be, and it's a category I want to continue to explore. I'm glad it's sort of broadened my horizons a little bit more than Jameson and is a huge step up from that. So thanks again for the recommendation. I think that's about all I have to say. For 65 bucks, I mean, it's international whiskey and I'm glad to have it on the shelves. It's also a beautiful presentation, as most international whiskey is, so looks good in the hutch as well. But last but not least, I just want to highlight that this is so cool that you guys made this recommendation, kept putting it in my feed and letting me know in the comments that this was something I should try. And I think it's going to give me a little bit more momentum to keep trying more Irish whiskeys and get more in international stuff. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey, keep trying new things, and cheers.